Hey beautiful people, what is up and welcome back to my channel. I am Jamila and I love all things beauty. I love all things makeup, I love all things skincare, and I especially love finding high-end and luxury beauty products at bargain prices. So as you guys saw from the title of today's video, I am finally going to be ranking all of my Natasha Denona eyeshadow palettes and showing you guys how I've rearranged them. But before we dive into the video, I do want to tell you guys about two products that I have been loving lately that was actually gifted to me by Dossier. Now, if you don't know Dossier, like I didn't really know about Dossier, they're actually a perfume company that creates perfumes that are inspired by high-end and luxury brands. So think Tom Ford, Chanel, Hermes, those types of brands. And I was actually really surprised when they reached out to me and offered to send me two perfumes to try. And once they did, I went onto their company website to, see a little bit more about this brand. What was their mission? What are their goals? And I was actually really, really impressed by what they had on their site because it seems to align really well with my goals, my personal beliefs, and my goals for this channel specifically. Now, you guys have already heard me talk at nauseum about the fact that I don't believe that luxury should be exclusive. And I'm really passionate about helping people find high-end and luxury beauty products without paying a ridiculous amount of money. And what I got from their site was that their brand was also created to do the same. So like I said, they create perfumes that are inspired by luxury brands, but their perfumes range from $29 to $59. So they're a fraction of the price. So they actually sent me two perfumes to try and I've been wearing them all week and I am honestly quite impressed. So when the perfumes came, they came in this really nice box, and once you opened it up, there was a really nice card here that includes all of the details about the perfume. It tells you the top notes, the middle notes, the bottom notes, and it also tells you what perfume it was inspired by. And then you get this really, really nice bottle that is still quite classy and still looks and feels very luxurious. It has a magnetic cap on top that just snaps right back, which I absolutely love. One thing that I believe when it comes to luxury and getting luxury at an affordable price is that you shouldn't have to sacrifice quality. And even though I don't have any Tom Ford or Chanel perfumes in my collection, I do feel like the perfumes that they provided me are really, really quality. And by that, I mean they smell amazing and they last all day. So I have been wearing these to work. So I've had a full day of having them on for the past week and really been trying to sink in, how does this feel? How does it smell? How does it wear? And I have really been enjoying this. So this one here is floral grapefruit, and it's inspired by Chanel, and this one definitely does have a more floral, more fruity scent to it, which I absolutely love because it's the perfume that I think I'm gonna take on vacation with me because it definitely reminds me of being back home in Trinidad, being on a beach somewhere, and it just feels like summer, which I absolutely love. The second perfume that they sent me was Floriental Coconut. If it have coconut in the title, I am going to buy it, I'm just saying. And this one was inspired by Tom Ford. Now, I have no Tom Ford perfumes, and that is because Tom Ford perfumes are $400. I've seen them at the cosmetics company store, and even at a discount, they're $200. And that's why I've never purchased it, because they're so expensive. And what I have found when it comes to perfumes is that I have a hard time buying perfumes for such an expensive price. And when I do decide to fork out the money to actually purchase it, I never wear it because I feel kind of guilty using the product when it costs so much in the first place. Which is another reason why I appreciate Dossier as a brand, because you're not spending a ton of money on the products and you don't feel guilty wearing it. Yeah, 100%. So if you are interested in Dossier, they were kind enough to give me a coupon code for you guys to try out. I don't actually make anything from this at all. It's just for you to save money. And y'all know I'm all about helping you save money. So if you use the code Jamila10, and all of that will be linked down below, you'll get 10% off of your order. So give them a try. Let me know how you like them. If there are specific scents that you've tried from Dossier that you would recommend me trying as well, let me know, because I definitely am thinking about investing in getting more of these perfumes because, like I said, the price is right and the quality is amazing. So now that we've gotten my two little new favorites out of the way, let's dive into the rankings. Okay. Oh my gosh, don't break. Please don't be broken. Okay, so these are all of my Natasha Denona palettes. I actually have 10 in total. And I had been thinking about doing a Natasha Denona rankings video kind of like ever since I did my last ranking video, which was a collab with Cara where we looked at eyeshadow formulas. And the reason why I wanted to do the Natasha Denona rankings is because while I was doing that video, I actually spent a lot of time diving into my collection and trying palettes over and over again to see how I felt about the formula. And one of the palettes, or one of the brands that I kept going back and forth on, was Natasha Denona. Now, if you've seen that video, and I'll make sure to link it up in the cards and down below for you guys, you already know that I believe Natasha's formula is unbelievably inconsistent. And because it was so inconsistent, I was struggling on where to put her within that rankings. Because there were palettes that I loved and palettes that I was like, really? This is what you did? So, so since that video, I was like, I have to do a rankings. And when I sat down yesterday to like line all the palettes up, I kind of lost my mind a little bit and decided that I was going to rearrange them. So in this video, you're going to see my rearranged palettes. Now, I did rank them based on, you know, how they actually came, like the original layout of the palettes. But I did rearrange them because in doing the rankings, I realized that some palettes weren't being used just because of the shades that were in there. If you have Natasha's palettes, you know that she was kind enough to include little holes in the back so you could pop out the shadows and rearrange them however you like, which I really appreciate now that I've had a chance to rearrange my palettes, because I do think the new arrangements that I have will help me get a lot more use out of these palettes. So some are rearranged, some I kind of kept the same if I really liked them, but I'll pop up pictures of the original palettes and tell you all why they fell in the ranking and let you all know what my new rearrangement, why I did the new rearrangement to some of these palettes. So coming in at number 10 is the Natasha Denona Love palette. Now, this is one of her midi size palettes, and from the 3 midis that I have, I honestly feel like the quality in her midi palettes are lower than the quality in her larger palettes, the ones that are $129. And I remember I was so excited to get this palette, but when I finally got it, I struggled to use it. So much so that when I was trying to create looks with this palette, I would oftentimes have to like wash my face off and start over. It was that bad. So because I had such a hard time using this palette, it is coming in at number 10. Now, since having the original version of this, I did do a little bit of rearranging with this palette, and this is my reimagined Natasha Denona Love palette. And what I tried to do with this palette was to create rows that I could use. So I have a row of pink, a row of purple, and a row of like more mauvey red shades, mauvey maroon red shades. And I do think that this layout is one that I'm going to get a lot more use out of than the old original layout. So I'll have both of these kind of like side by side so you guys can see. But yeah, that's number 10 because the original Love palette did not have the quality that I needed it to have. Now, coming in at number 9 is another midi palette, and this is the Natasha Denona Sunrise palette. Now, fun fact, I actually purchased this palette with the Love palette during Natasha's, I believe it was her last Black Friday sale, and she was doing like a buy one, get one. So I paid $65 for both of these palettes. And this is another one that I rearranged. So this is my version of the Love palette. And I tried to keep it very, very warm and more on the like orange side, orange yellow side. But I had the same issue with the Love palette, which is why it's coming in at number 9. I didn't like the quality of it. I honestly thought that it was just okay. And honestly, a little hard to work with, if I'm being honest. The rearrangement that I did for this Sunrise palette is actually one that I like a lot better. And similar to with the Love palette, I tried to create rows. So this is definitely a more kind of yellow row. This is a more pink row. And this is a more kind of copper bronze row. And I should mention that in rearranging my Love and my Sunrise palette, I actually just kind of like popped out shades from both of these. So these are I popped out all the shades from Love and Sunrise and just rearranged them. So I do think that I'm going to get a lot more use out of both of these now that I like the color story a little bit more. Coming in at number 8 is, I believe, my first Natasha Denona palette ever. And that is the Natasha Denona Safari palette. This is another palette that I rearranged, and I think it's my favorite rearrangement, if I'm being honest. And the reason why this came in at number 8 is because the original palette was an all matte palette. And while I do enjoy mattes, I don't typically wear all matte looks. So I actually was never using this palette. Like, I never reached for it because it had no shimmers. And when I was doing the ranking yesterday, I was like, I'm never gonna use this palette unless I add some shimmers in here. And that's what I did. And it looks very different. So this is my reimagined Safari palette. Now, for the Safari palette, I actually pulled shades from Circo Loco, Aeris, and Joya, which are the holiday palettes. And I kind of just like put all the shades on the table and then pulled the ones that I liked to create this Safari palette, which, as you can see, is a very blue-green color story with some orange. And I love it. I am obsessed with how this one turned out. And I honestly, truly feel that I'm going to get so much use out of it. Now that it is, one, a mix of mattes and shimmers. And two, there's a very clear color story going here. Where it's like, I can do blue looks, green looks, and add some golds in there. Coming in at number 7 is the Circo Loco palette. Now, Natasha's Circo Loco palette was one that I was super interested in because it was really, really colorful. And it's absolutely stunning on its own. But after using it like twice, I realized that it was going to be a palette that I wasn't going to get a ton of use out of, which is why it's ranking at number 7 a lot lower. Because the original palette of this, like the color story, is not a wearable color story. Is it beautiful? Yes, 100,000%. But was it going to be a palette that I reached for? Honestly, not a lot, because it was such a bright, colorful palette that I could only really use it when I felt like playing in color. And I want to make sure I'm getting a lot of use out of all of my palettes. So this was also one that I rearranged. So I grabbed some of the mattes from Safari, and then there was the holiday palettes that I mentioned before. And this is my reimagined Circo Loco palette, which still leans pretty colorful, but I feel like it's wearable colorful. And like, you're gonna pick up on a theme here. All of these palettes I created in like rows. Like, my mind was just like, I need to be able to create a look across the rows. So that's what I did. I created a row of purple, and then a row of more pink shades, and then a more neutral row. And of course you can mix and match all of these shades, but I definitely feel like this is more wearable color, and this is gonna be a palette that I'm gonna get a lot more use out of. And then coming in at number 6 and 5. Yeah, 6 and 5. Like, I couldn't pick between these two. And I don't know if it's because I purchased them together or because they're just so small. And those are the holiday palettes, Joya and Aeris. Now, you guys can already tell this is not the original Joya and Aeris. And that's because, like I mentioned, I pulled all of those shades out so that I could rearrange those palettes. And the reason why this is ranking at number 6 is because the original Joya and Aeris palettes were palettes that I fell in love with. Those were the first 2 palettes from Natasha Denona where I was like, oh, this is the quality that people be talking about when they say they love Natasha Denona. The quality in those 2 palettes were impeccable. And even though they were definitely more warm, red, orange, and you were only really going to get one type of look except for that random purple blue, I definitely felt that I could create beautiful looks with it. And they were definitely palettes that I was drawn to and palettes that I wanted to use. Now, since using those original palettes, I did rearrange them so that they were more suited to my needs. One of the issues that I had with the original palettes is that they each only had one matte shade, which for most people, you need like at least 2 mattes. One for the crease and one to like deepen up the outer corner. And there was only really one matte shade, and it was like a pink in both palettes, like a pink and an orange. And I was like, I need a little bit more. So for the first palette, I tried to create a like pink gradient. So you have a, light pink shade that you can use in the crease or to like soften up some of the deeper shades. And then you had a deep matte that you could use to deepen up the outer V. And then there were 2 shimmers. This is definitely more of a topper, and this is definitely more of a satin. But I felt like I could create complete looks with this palette. And there was definitely a color story going here, where I know if I want a pink look, I could reach for this and come up with a really beautiful pink look very easily. And this is definitely something that I would see myself traveling with. And then for the second palette, with the same, I kept the same theme going, you know? A light shade that I could put in the crease and use to like soften up other colors. And then a really rich brown that I could use to deepen up the outer V. And I wanted this to be more neutral, more orange. I love orange eyeshadow. So I have a more topper shade and a kind of like satin orange shade that I absolutely love. So overall, you know, I'm really happy with how these two color stories turned out, because I definitely feel like these are more cohesive than the original palettes. So because I grouped that together, you know, that was like 6 and 5. And then coming in at number 4, the palette that's actually on my eyes, and that is the Natasha Denona Sunset palette. This is a beautiful palette. Like, it's a stunning palette. And this is not one of the ones that I rearranged. This is the original layout. And I love that this is just a warm, neutral palette. I love that you get some really beautiful oranges because, like I said, I absolutely love orange eyeshadow. A really nice, vibrant yellow. And there are even some slight mauve tones. And I like that you can create a variety of like wearable looks with this, but that you also get Natasha's shimmer formula. Like, it's such a good formula in this palette. And this is coming in at number 4 because it's definitely one of those that I will get a lot of use out of, but it's lower than some of the other ones because I also have some other more neutral palettes that I can get a lot of use out of. And if I'm being honest, this almost runs a little too warm. Just almost. Like, I have to be in the mood for something that's extremely warm because this can definitely be a little too warm. Now, coming in at number 3 is a palette that took me a while to try, and one that I am still like very surprised by, and that is the Lila palette. Now, I really wanted this palette because it was a purple palette. I was like, oh, I need a beautiful purple palette. Like, I need this. And then I got it and I was like, oh, is this a purple palette? Like, is it really? Because the more that I looked at it, and when I actually had this in my collection, the less I felt like this was a purple palette. Because when you take this purple shade out, and even this purple shade, like, you get some pinks, and then you get some more kind of like neutral wearable shades. Like, I feel like you get like this row of purples and these that lean purple, but it's not a true purple palette. And it's also a more grunge palette. I typically don't go for a lot of grunge looks, but even though it's not the purple I expected, I actually really, really love this. Like, I love that it gives me more versatility. Like, at first I was like, this isn't what I wanted, but now that I've had a chance to use it and have it sink in, I realized that this is actually what I needed. I don't need another all purple palette, especially one of this size. So the fact that I can create purple looks, pink looks, and then some more neutral, you know, wearable looks that are definitely on the cooler side. And this shade here is a duochrome that shifts multiple colors. This is a stunning palette, and I am so happy that I have this in my collection. I need to use this more. I haven't used this a lot at all. Now, coming in at number 2, the palette that everybody hates. The palette that caused its own controversy, but the palette that I love very, very much. The Natasha Denona Zendo palette. This is also a palette that I did not rearrange. I couldn't bring myself to rearrange this palette because I love this palette so much. This is not Natasha's formula. I'm gonna just say that right now. The shimmers in here are not gonna give you Natasha's typical shimmers. So if that's what you're looking for, you're not gonna get it in this palette. Now, it does have her creamy mattes, and I feel like her formula in her creamy mattes keeps improving. So if you like the creamy mattes, you might like that. But I really liked this palette because it gave me soft shimmers. I felt like this gives me the type of shimmers that Charlotte Tilbury gives me, but with Natasha Denona pigment. One of my biggest issues with Charlotte Tilbury is that she doesn't have pigmented shadows. So if you have a deeper complexion, it's a little harder to work with. But Natasha always gives pigment, and because these are like these soft satin shades with more pigment, I felt like I didn't have to work very hard. And honestly, this has all of the color stories that I like to work with. Like I have, you know, the more gold bronzy type shades, definitely the pinks that I love wearing, and I think it looks amazing on everybody. But then you get these like cool tones like out of nowhere. Some really, really beautiful kind of like blues and this really nice deep green. I feel like I can create so many different looks with this palette, and this is like the only palette that I actually really need. So I know people don't like it. I know people weren't impressed with the formula, but this is actually one that I love and probably my most used Natasha Denona palette, if I'm being honest. And I've only had this for a couple of months, like, and it's already at the top. And last but not least, my number one Natasha palette is the Natasha Denona Trio Chrome. I went back and forth so much on whether or not this should be number one. Like, number one and number two was a toss-up. But when I tell you that the mattes in this is so superior, the matte shadows in this palette, superior. They are beyond. And the reason why this beat out 10 though is because this palette is like the most simplistic, easy to use palette. The mattes blend easily and quickly, and I feel like when you want to create a look, honestly, you just need 3 shades: a crease shade, outer corner shade, and a topper shade. So when I want a nice quick look, this is what I go to. Like, this is exactly what I grab for. Now, you only really get 3 shimmers, so the versatility might not be all the way there, but I like something that's quick and easy to use. I love blending, it's therapeutic, but I don't want to be blending from now until thy kingdom come. So because of, you know, the quality of the mattes in this, how easy this palette is to use, and how beautiful the looks turn out at the end, because these are shifty shades. They're triochromes. They're not the best triochromes, but they're shifty shades. So you get some dimension with that too. This is my number one palette. Whew. Okay, so there you guys have it. Those were all of my Natasha Denona palettes, and that was my ranking of the Natasha Denona palettes. Now, I should have sprinkled some of my footage of me rearranging the palettes throughout. If you follow me on Instagram, you would have seen it there as well. But I hope you guys enjoy this. Like, do you rearrange your shadows at all, or no? Like, it took me a while to do this because I was afraid of like screwing things up and, you know, making it worse than it was. But I'm really glad that I did, because the configuration of these palettes now means that I'm going to get a lot more use out of it. And that's my goal lately, is that I need to be using the products that I bought because they cost a lot of money, like a lot of money. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Please leave down any comments below letting me know what your number one Natasha Denona palette is. And as always, don't forget to like, subscribe, share, and I will catch you guys in my next one. Bye.